welcome. It's Sunday the 9th of November. We are in not so sunny Melbourne. John, how are you, my good
Great
man?
to see you. It was good to be in Geelong. It was raining up there too.
It was, mate. We're at the Adina at Pentridge, and as promised, we've got brought an episode down here. We did the great debate at Geelong last night.
Too great, but it went okay. It was more of a discussion, wasn't it? Really?
It really was. It was a bit of friendly banter with Doug Morgan and Jackie. And Jackie
got involved, which was great.
It was, and that was last night at Geelong. And today we're here at Pentridge. We've just seen a fantastic play, the Blue Freckle by playwright Ray Mooney.
By Ray Mooney, who I know very well, and you do too. You've done a podcast with him.
We did a podcast with Ray.
It was absolutely brilliant.
But
it was well acted. They had good actors.
And real. How real was it, John?
So real. It was it's sort of about two guys getting accused of a rape that they didn't really do. But getting convicted in the end because of the police verbal, the way it worked in those days. And Ray's idea was to show how the system worked.
Yes.
And how it was flawed because of police verbal and a judge who knew it was verbal but went along with it.
100%. It basically broke it down and explained how they did or do.
So congratulations, Ray. It was a fantastic play.
Thanks, Ray. And we're going to have a chat to him in a couple of hours. We're going out for a meal, and we've got the debate. We've got lots of different shots. Our friend Rue is filming this for us now in our hotel room. And we're most grateful. But we're going to get a lot of bits and pieces tonight, aren't we, John? You've been flat out.
Definitely. Well, it's showing part of the trip of Melbourne, really.
It is. We've got
and you've got some good shots from the museum, haven't you?
We've got some great shots from the museum. Maccas will put it all together.
They'll be interested in that, I think.
For sure. And we'll put in the credits the lovely girls last night. Our little Melbourne crew that filmed it for us. We're most grateful of that. Catherine and Atlanti and Catherine, the two lovely ladies.
And always supported by Adrian, who's always there as a backup.
Adrian is fantastic, and Robert to thank from Geelong Jail as well.
Yeah.
So this is just a bit of an intro. We've got a lot of footage. We're going to put it all together. It'll be out very shortly. And we're going to have a great night tonight. And we're going to do some cutaways and bits with Ray and a few other people.
The only bad news, we couldn't bring Rocky because they all
couldn't bring Rocky.
They're all asking for him here.
Well, he's a celebrity. He's a celebrity. John's a superstar down here, by the way. He's a celebrity. And it's been great. We've had the girls as well, our friends.
We had... Athanasia and Connie came, and we had a lovely family come down from Sydney as well. You know, they're really nice.
And Rue, who's filming. But we've been surrounded by great people. It's been a great experience. We've got another day or two to go before we're back to the big smoke. Yeah. So, and that's our intro, and it's going to be a great episode, number 66. From not so sunny Victoria, great city. Thank you, Victoria, but the weather's been shit.
Well, it has, but it was much better in Sydney.
True.
When I left,
that's true. But, absolutely.
It's such strange weather, but look, it's really great here. A lot of people don't like it where we are at Pentridge, but I think it's great that you've had.
We love it.
I speak highly of it because it was a place of trauma.
Absolutely. Horror.
Bashing, the whole works, you name it. People suiciding, hangings.
Yes.
Where they actually hanged the last.
It happened. It's Australian criminal history.
Yeah. And now you've got a movie theatre there. You've got a little shopping centre there.
It's like a village.
Coffee shops everywhere.
Yep.
I walked Rocky through there.
Yep.
All the people in cafes.
Rocky would have loved it.
He just loved it. You see kids walking through, laughing, dogs going through, and. You never saw any of this when I was
going to say, it's a complete turnaround to what it was, John.
And I think
spent 4 years in age, didn't you?
I did. No. And any bad spirits that I think were there, I think they've gone. Bugger this, it's too much...
Bring in some positivity.
Yeah, too much positivity here.
Absolutely.
Whereas Geelong, I think they're still there. It's got that aura.
Oh, that was free. That place is haunted.
It seems to be cold.
No crap, viewers. The place is haunted for sure.
And you'll show a little bit of that.
I've got some pictures and stuff of that too last night, so it was freezing. All right, Rue's arm's about to fall off, so it was just basically our introduction, folks. Episode 66, and enjoy. It's going to start shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Marcus, before we run this, I would like to say something so the audience, the people who watch this, will know exactly who the players were. We all know who Doug Morgan was and who I was, but there's a lady later, towards the end, I invited her, she wanted to get up and have something to say. And I invited her up because her name is Jackie. She came all the way from Adelaide with her husband, was in the audience, and listened to what we had to say. And the thing is that for me to introduce it had to be a reason. And the reason was that she came to visit me with her mother. And she was only 16 when her mother used to come and see me. And she was a Christian lady who came to visit people, because I was in Adelaide, had been extradited from New South Wales. So the daughter came a few times. And so I met her when she was 16 and knew her when she was 17. But eventually, the final thrust of it is that we got together, and when she was nearly 21, she actually busted me out of jail up in Queensland. It's not a well-known thing, but it's a fact, and it was quite a successful escape. We're out nearly 12 months. I was out nearly 12 months, and she pulled it off magnificently. If you talk about escapes, it was so well done. And I would like to get that across, that there was a long history between us. She actually, I hadn't seen her for years, but we've always kept in touch over the years, and I'm very good friends with her and her husband. So I just thought people should know who Jackie was, why she was involved in this debate, and she just wanted to get up and say what makes people commit crimes, and that's really the thrust of it. And she was nearly 21 when she did it. But so she was much younger than I was. But the fact is that I got her away from a terrible relationship, and which she'll mention in the audience. But I just think that should be mentioned. And if you want to know more about it, I suggest you buy my book, The Last Escape, because there's the whole story. My whole life story is in that. Particularly, there's quite a bit about Jackie in that particular book.
My name's Rob. I'm just going to stand up the back. And let's put the limelight for the ladies up in front. But I just want to welcome you to the Geelong Jail, and I just want to obviously acknowledge the lot of people that once called this place home, but I also want to acknowledge the hundreds of thousands of people who actually lived in this building over 137 years. The good, the bad, the innocent, and the guilty that actually spent time here. So for those of you that haven't been to Geelong Jail before, it is quite an interesting building. It was the third jail to open in Victoria of a 712. It opened in 1853 and we operated right up until 1991. So what you're seeing is how a lot of the labs are actually here. So there's no glass in the cell windows, so the place does get hot, cold, and wet. And you also have a bucket for a toilet right up until the day it closed. It was the last of the Victorian jails to not have hot storage. I will kick things off. So I just want to, so there's always been a rivalry between Victoria and New South Wales. Not just for the football, but for crime. From the bushrangers of the 19th century to the early of the modern age, both the states have claimed their own outlaws. Victoria gave us Ned Kelly, the iron-armed rebel, defying police and defying the system, and becoming the legend of the South. Across the border in New South Wales, they answered with Ben Hall, the so-called gentleman bushranger, polite to all his victims and ruthless to his enemies, a man who robbed with a bow and a smile. Years later, the rivalries moved from the bush to the city streets, with Swithy Taylor ruling the lanes of Little Lonsdale in Melbourne, with sharp suits and a sharp temper. A gangster who turned crime into celebrity. Sydney struck back with Tilly Devine, a madam, a mob boss, and a razor queen of dark hairs. She carved her name to Sydney's underworld and made sure that no one could. And still, the contest didn't die. In the late 20th century came the modern bandits. New South Wales, we have a John Kelly, the man who escaped Silverwater prison by helicopter, and Victoria, who ended up in the armed bandit. Fast, fearless, and just as determined to outshine each other and both states. For over a century, the border has been divided more than just two states. It divided the legends, each side claiming their weight of outlaw and the tougher tales. Ned and Ben, Squizzy and Kelly, Kelly and Morgan, a line of roads stretching across time, bound by pride and endless question of which state bred the best criminals. Maybe the answer lies somewhere between the bush, bars and the banks, in the stories we keep telling and the legends that keep growing. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we bring together two names etched in Australian criminal history. John Killick, the decimal currency bandit, and Doug Morgan, Victoria's own after dark bandit. Two men, two states. Let's dive into the stories behind the headlines. I'd like to introduce first John Killick, the decimal currency bandit. Born in Sydney in 1942, John Kelly would go on to become one of Australia's most notorious and daring bank robbers. His crime career spanned decades and crossed state lines, landing him in and out of some of the nation's toughest jails. On the 14th of February 1966, the day Australia switched from pounds to dollars, Kelly made criminal history. Armed with a pistol, he stormed the ANZ Bank at Carramel and became the first man in the country to steal brand new decimal currency, the haul around $20,000, earning him an unforgettable nickname, the decimal currency bandit. Killick's life became a saga of bold robberies, violent escapes, and ultimate redemption. His most infamous moment came in 1999 when his partner Lucy hijacked a helicopter and plucked him from Sydney's high-security small water prison. An escape so audacious it stunned the world. Until to this day, John remains the only prisoner in Australian history to escape jail in a helicopter. Let me introduce Doug Morgan. Doug Morgan was born in Seoul in the 1950s, the oldest of identical twin boys. And it was that twin connection that would one day see him become one of Victoria's most talked about criminal stories. In the late 1970s, Doug and his brother Peter became known across the state as the After Dark Bandits, a daring duo who launched a string of armed robberies across country Victoria. They targeted banks and TABs, usually small towns, striking right before closing time when cash was on hand and police resources were thin. Doug had once worked as a bank teller, so he knew the routines, the rhythms, and exactly when to move. The twins dressed alike, acted alike, and thought alike. So alike that the police didn't even realise they were chasing two men instead of one. The most infamous moment came at the walk to the bank. Doug held up the bank for a record 27 minutes, calmly sitting down with the bank manager, sharing a Boston bun and a cup of coffee, while the staff waited, terrified but strangely at ease. It was a surreal, almost pivotal moment in the middle of the holdup. By the time the law finally caught up with them, the Morgan twins had committed more than 24 bank robberies, becoming legends in Australian criminal folklore. Two brothers, identical in-laws and nerves, who for a brief moment the whole country wonder who are these men known as the After Dark Bandits. Both John and Doug have done their time, and along the way they have lived, worked and laughed alongside some of Australia's hardest criminals. From prison yards to working gangs, they share meals, stories and moments that most of us can only imagine. Now tonight, we're going to
hang on. Thank you.
But tonight we're going to ask a round of questions directed at both the gentlemen up front, and then we'll do some questions and answers at the end. So John, we'll start with you. Let's go to your childhood. So John, you grew up in Sydney, Doug in Victoria. How was crime talked about or seen in your family? Was it part of your life or was it something that came later?
Well, I think that on behalf of both of us here, I'll also, before we start this, that it's not, tonight is not a glorification of crime or what happened, but we're talking tonight about history, about stuff that's happened. So that can't be taken or erased from the history books. So what we will talk about has happened, whether or not, you can't do anything about it. So we'll discuss it, and it's not really, we're not really talking about like this bank robbery was better than that bank robbery. We're talking about the effects of crime and the effects that it had on people and the effects it had on the people that committed the crimes. And I've got to say that I started off as a young guy. I was born in the middle of the Second World War. It was a pretty tough time. I was born into a family that my father, unfortunately, was addicted to alcohol and was occasionally violent. And he was a very good fighter and he terrorised everybody. I missed a lot of schooling over it. We didn't have a very good life. It was a dysfunctional life right up until my mother actually took her own life, and she's still on my heart today. So I went from there, got mixed up with other young guys a bit older than me, and within 6 months I was in prison. And that's how it started for me. I didn't start off as a criminal. We were always taught, Dad always was against crime, always. And I remember saying when I was a young guy, I want to be a policeman when I get older. And he said, you ever be a policeman? He said, or you won't be in this house. So it wasn't that he was anti-law, but he was anti-police because they used to arrest him for being drunk. And so I grew up with that attitude. And then when my mother died, I blamed him, left home, and that's how I got in trouble. And I'll tell you later, I'll talk later about where I went from there and why I did the things I did. But I say now that you cannot change the history, you cannot change what's happened. So we're not here to glorify it, but we're here to talk about it.
Thanks, mate. Can you just hand the microphone over to Doug?
Sorry. It's all right, John. He's a little bit slow. He's getting old now. What was the question?
So going back to your childhood.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you. Well, I started, first time can you hear me? First remembering, I'm a stupid Melbourne crim. Anyway, first time I remember the police in my life was, my father was a big businessman in the 60s, big building company, and it was going broke because of credit squeeze. And one night we come home and the federal coppers were raiding our house because they thought my old man was going to take the last of the assets. So that's the first time I saw him. We didn't grow up against the police. I still not. I quite like policemen, except if it's tonight when I'm driving home. It's just they're doing a job. I grew up. My dad was a big businessman. 49 before I was even born, he had a big shootout at a bank. He fixed his life up, and he was 18 then. He did a bit of time in Pentridge, etc. I was born in 53. That was 44 years later with my twin brother. What happened was my dad would build his life back up, and if something went wrong like a credit squeeze, he would go back to the criminal elements. And the rule that I learnt from him was you can do anything you like to prop up your world and look after your family, whatever it is. So I had this sort of, my name's Morgan, it was like, Morgan's allowed to do anything, that's it. No respect for society's laws, rules, or anybody else in it. Look after us first. So without realising, I adopted that. We ended up on the run after 1960. He went and started a new company, that was from Seaford. Started a new company 20 kilometres away in Mornington, but in those days you could change your name quite easily. That went for a couple of years and he got into trouble again. He just always never seemed to be able to hold things together. Brilliant man, I love my old father, but he just had this problem not holding finances together. So then he did something else, I can't even remember what it was. So we have to run to New Zealand. I was about 11 or 10 and a half. He starts working again over there. So our life really is a little bit working, crime, working. Right, so what happens over there, he convinced people he could buy them cars in Australia because you used to have half the deposit or a third of the deposit in Australia to buy a Holden, but he didn't have the funds to buy the cars. So then he had to go on the run again. So he got money for deceiving people around us. So we shift up to the top of New Zealand, and I went to the best school in Auckland, because even though he was a crim or a crook, we always had plenty of money. And what happened was he started breaking into post offices when I was about 12. I used to go along at night time, and I jokingly say on school nights, and help my dad wheel safes out of the post office when I was 12 years old. I think we did 30 post offices, and he was getting a press coverage bigger than John, or I can even imagine. And so I grew up basically going along and wheeling out safes when I was 12 years old. And I thought it was what everybody did. You don't see that, like, isn't anybody else doing this stuff? And then some nights I'd have to work to midnight to actually do my studies to catch up the time I've lost breaking in the post office with him. But it went bad and he got caught. And I didn't realise at the time, when I look back now, he got caught and he was very good, because he used to teach me about these things. He'd go, two sides of crime. Do the crime, but you must know how to avoid going to jail, or at least eliminating the amount of time. So he was a master at it. So when he got picked up one night breaking into a post office, he told the police that he'd seen it in the newspapers and he was a copycat thief. He done 30 and they got him for one. And I just look at that and go, that's what crime's supposed to be. You're not supposed to do the crime and surrender to everything they want. But where I know I became a crim that day when he got caught, we had two houses because he was on the run. So we were living in one house and he was living in another house. So he must have been a good crook. Now, when he got arrested, the other house was full of safes. We'd wheel them out and take them to the other house and break into them, because lessons on crime is the back of a safe is a lot thinner than the front of the safe. So you take them home and you just open them with a sledgehammer. So I'm 13. He's now been arrested. My mum didn't do it. My brother and I, who's a twin brother, so same age, we took Dad's car and we went round to that other house and we started taking the safes and dropping them in a river. I wasn't asked to do that, but I realised that if I don't get rid of evidence, my dad might be doing 4 or 5 years. He ended up doing 18 months. So I look back and go, I was a good crim at 12 and a half. I saved my old man. And I would have done anything for him. And that's where we started. So I'm really a crim since I was 12 years old. And I believe if you've been brought up with a mentality of criminality in you, today I'm still a criminal. It's like a footballer. You don't play anymore because you got old, but deep down I still think like a criminal, I still plan like a criminal, I still smile when I walk past banks and go, I reckon I could still do one. That'd be a bit harder. I shouldn't joke like that, because I actually decided to give it away before we got caught. 6 months, and my brother kept going, etc., etc. So I grew up in this whole environment. It's the same as somebody grows up. I'll try and explain it. What's that tennis player? Ash Barty. Ash Barty grew up in a tennis environment or whatever. She becomes a tennis player. She grows up in my family, she won't be a tennis player. It's as simple as that. Now, you cannot blame your upbringing or anything like that, because my father can teach me how to do it, even though he was naive. He didn't realise he was teaching me. But at the last instant, I'm the one that has to walk through the bank door, not my father. And he'd been dead 7 years, so we can't blame him. And I certainly won't. I love my father. He taught me a lot of good things as well. My whole life, I've recovered from crime and paid all the bills and rebuilt my life with what he taught me. I'm a brilliant tradesman, much better at trade as a tradie than a bank robber. If I was a really, really, really good bank robber, you wouldn't be talking to me tonight.
Or John, for that matter. So the next question, John. Did you have any understanding of the banking system before you started robbing banks?
Well, it's important after listening to that, to Doug, that you get it across that when all of us are driven, I don't care who you are, from the time we're young to when you develop and get older, we're driven by certain things, and our character is formed by certain things that happen. Now, I saw my mother kill herself firstly. I left home that day. I blamed my father because he gave us a whole life and she couldn't handle it. But also, one of the reasons that I always felt she killed herself was that the banks foreclosed on our house and we got a much inferior house. In fact, it was the worst house in the suburb. And Mum I knew she was ashamed, but I was ashamed. It was a terrible, terrible place and looked old and I was even ashamed for my friends to come when I used to play a lot of tennis and that, they'd come around and see that house. And when she died, I didn't just blame the father, but I blamed the banks and I blamed the doctor because we were in debt to the doctor who used to give us sleeping tablets that she used to take her life. And she OD'd on those. And we didn't have a phone to ring the doctor. We didn't have a car to go and get a doctor or to take her to hospital. So they relied on me to get on a push bike at 2 in the morning and go and ring up a doctor. I went to on my push bike to the first phone, it was broken. So then I went to another phone and rang the doctor, and his name, I'll never forget, was Ferguson. And his wife answered and said, "Doctor's asleep." I said, "My mother is very, very sick." And she said, "No, he's not coming," and hung up. And I knew it was because we owed money. And by the time I got through to another doctor, and he came, saw my mother, called for an ambulance. The ambulance got her. By the time she got to the hospital, it was too late. They took her. Now, I left home that morning. As soon as I knew she was dead, I walked out, and my father couldn't believe it. My brother couldn't believe it. I said, "I'm going." I was not geared or in any way able to cope in a world that I knew nothing about. I didn't know how to survive. I had a job, but I didn't know how to survive. I knew nothing about crime. I never thought about crime. I used to read a lot. I was a bit of a sickly kid until I took up tennis. And so the first night I went into a boarding room, and it was a share room because I couldn't afford a proper one. The guy there was a wrestler, tried to rape me. Now, although he didn't, and he very nearly did, and he apologised later, but the thing is that I had a chip on my shoulder a mile high. I really, and people will tell you, and you go through, if you can ever get hold of my old records when I first went to jail 6 months later, it will say that by the time I was 18, I was a hard guy. I got in a fight, I won it, even though I got king hit, and I just was hard. I was really hard, and I was ruthless. I took a ruthless attitude. It was me against the world. And that's the guy that I was by the time I was 18. So pretty soon I thought, if I'm going to be a criminal, and that's the way, because you start to think like a criminal, excuse me, when you're in jail, because you get taught that way, because you think like you do outside, you put on a dog, because if you see two people bashing a guy in jail, you walk away, and you don't, anyone in screws say, "Did you see who done it?" Where if you're outside and you see, you'll try and stop it, or you'll at least say, "Look, those people bashed that guy." You've got a totally different code of ethics in jail, and that's the code I learned very young. So very soon I decided I'm going to rob banks. And when I did rob banks, the first one wasn't very good. I fired a shot into the floor accidentally. I was nervous and shaking. Got away with that. The second one was very professional. Got away with that. That was the day, C-Day, I became Australia's first C-Day man by accident. But after that, I did rob a lot of banks. I became right up the top, Australia's most wanted. Interpol were looking for me in America because I had a girlfriend that had gone to America. And all of a sudden, I realised that I was an outlaw. I wasn't just a crim, I was an outlaw. I was up there, I was an outlaw. And I was young, and I became a pariah. I wasn't able to associate with people because I couldn't tell them about my background and who I was. It's a false name, and I lived a false life. I pretended to be someone who I wasn't. If I met a girl, I couldn't really tell her who I was or what my background was. And so eventually when I got caught and arrested down in Melbourne, came down to Melbourne, that was 1966. I thought, I went to Pentry, which was a pretty heavy place, tried to escape, and was taken to Hastings, and everybody knows when Hastings got absolutely flogged, stripped, bashed, and I thought it only made me harder. It didn't help me, it didn't cure me, it didn't stop me. Maybe some people would say I'm never going back to jail, but it didn't stop me. So that's the guy I was, and I'll tell you later, when we're talking a bit later, why I changed. But that's what I was, that's why I became, because I was driven by the person, by my experiences. And we can say that our background, and we can say our environment does not make us what we are, and I agree. I've seen people that have had backgrounds worse than me, that have never gone to jail, gone and studied, nice school, and they become somebody. I didn't do it. But I never had a mentor either. Doug had a mentor, unfortunately that mentor was a criminal, and so he went that way. I always felt that if I had a mentor who took me under my wing and told me, look, you're going the wrong way, this is the way to go, I might have, who knows, might have been somebody who'd done a really lot of good things when I was younger instead of doing bad things. But you can change. That change has got to come from within you. It's got to be for the same person that you were, you're driven to be what you were, you can change. But you have to be determined to change, and you have to have a reason to change. And I'll tell you what my reasons were later. But I can tell you that I do believe, from what I've seen, the systems that I've been in, the people I've seen, the results I've seen, who's been hurt, who hasn't been hurt, that most of the time criminals become who and what they are by backgrounds and things that happened to them when they were younger.
Awesome. John, just quickly before you hand it over, you mentioned your first bank robbery, you were nervous and you fired your gun into the floor.
Right.
I don't think many people realise that up until the 1980s, bank tellers actually had guns themselves. So what was it like for both of you really, when you were robbing a bank knowing that you were actually going to a bank where the staff were actually armed?
Well, I often, I used to go into banks and thought, why the hell aren't people robbing these banks? They're wide open. They didn't have cameras. They didn't have the shut-up screens. It just looked so easy that I was a pretty fast runner. If I can get in, get that money, and get away. But then I found out that bank tellers did have guns. Now that would change the attitude of a lot of crims, and I thought maybe that's why crims don't go in and hold up banks. But I'm a fast runner, I'm going to take the chance. So that's what I did, and I was a fast runner. But the other thing too was that I always planned a very good getaway route. So I always thought that I'll have a getaway route, run down there, jump over that fence and through there and around there, and I was awake. But when I went to Melbourne, first of all in Cabramatta, in 1966, that day on the 14th February 66, I was actually chased by a butcher and the bank manager, and they came after me, and I got into the car and I could see in the rear vision they were coming, and I thought, and that's when you don't know what you're going to do. I always thought I would never shoot anybody, that everything I did was on bluff, total bluff. I would never hurt anybody. That was my attitude. But then I saw them coming and I thought, what are we going to do? They're going to shoot. So you don't know what you're going to do until it actually happens. But fortunately for me, they must have thought, what are we going to do if we go up, he might shoot us. So they commandeered a car, they came after me and I managed to get away. And then I came down to Melbourne, got chased by a couple of bank tellers, they fired shots at me. They just missed, they hit the car, they hit the back of the car, and I couldn't believe it, they're firing shots at me. I didn't fire back, but I managed to get away then too. And I thought, this is real stuff. It's not, you're not breaking in a jeweler shop or you're not writing checks. You're going in there, you're taking their money, they don't like it, they're entitled, and they lawfully can shoot you and kill you. So that's probably what stopped a lot of people in those days robbing banks. But as you said, in the early 80s, I think it was, they stopped the tellers because I took the gun off the tellers in the Commonwealth Bank in 1966. I took their gun and it had Commonwealth Bank engraved on it. Now, other guys started robbing banks, they started taking the tellers' guns. And they realised the police said, we can't have this because the criminals are getting guns by going in and taking from the banks. So that's one of the reasons I need to stop. Because I don't know of any case where a bank teller actually shot a bandit, but there was a terrible case in Sydney that I remember that a guy on drugs, because what happened in the 80s, all of a sudden, everybody's taking drugs, all the criminals, a large percentage of them. And it happened because the American servicemen were coming over here and it started coming over in the late 60s, 70s. By the late 70s, early 80s, what they were doing, instead of just breaking in and to be able to afford the drugs, the heroin, they started doing armed robberies. And then all of a sudden, epidemic in the 80s and 90s, epidemic of bank robberies. There were hundreds of bank robberies, and it just became an epidemic. And of course, the police did not want that to happen, all these bandits coming in and taking guns. So I think that had a lot to do with the change in the banking system. But now that we've reached a stage where nobody even thinks about a bank robbery because security is so good, there's not a lot of money in banks anymore. And the thing is that you've got security cameras here, you've got security cameras outside. I saw a show over in England where they got the guys 3 mile away, parking the car, coming around there, and they tracked them down 3 mile away. There's so many cameras. So that's what modern day bank robbers are up against. They're virtually dinosaurs, and you just don't see bank robberies happen anymore. But in those days, the banks were wide open, and I realised it, and so I took advantage of that. And that's why in those days, if you got caught or arrested for bank robbery, the police would verb you, because they thought, even if you didn't do that one, you've done others, they'll verb you, and you'd get a very big sentence. Bank robbers used to get heavy sentences. They used to get sentences 2 or 3 times heavier than what pedophiles got. And bank robbers were upset about that too. But what I did as I got older, I worked with psychs, and they got it through to me. They said, John, you always thought that you're not going to harm anybody. You're running into a bank. You've got it under control. You've never shot anybody. You've been shot at. You've never shot back. So, but what you don't realise is the trauma you're putting through, because it is a violent crime. I never saw it as a violent crime, robbing, holding people up with a gun. But it is, because if there's 10 people in that bank, then there might be 8 that'll recover from that, be okay. Maybe an experience, something they'll talk about. There could be 2 that you ruin their life. They could be traumatised for the rest of their life. It could ruin their whole family, it could ruin their marriage. And this is what got home to me, and I had to work hard with psychologists for a long time to realise, John, it is a violent crime. Just pointing a gun at somebody. And then what I did, my wife Gloria is now 83 or 84 actually, and I imagined her at a bank and a guy running in with a balaclava, with a weapon, shouting orders, and I think she could have a heart attack. She could faint, she could fall over and hurt herself. But I realised then that we're all different. Some of us could handle. If somebody ran into a bank now and robbed the bank and I was in there, I'd just look at it, I'd think, I wouldn't do anything, but I wouldn't be scared either. But if you imagine someone who's never experienced any of this sort of stuff, might be an old lady, she could bloody have a heart attack. So pointing a gun at anybody, whether it's in a milk bar, or whether it's in a bank, wherever it is, it's a violent crime. And I accept that, and I really feel remorseful for the things that I've done. And I have tried, which I'll talk about later, I have tried to redeem myself and do things, but to rectify it. But you can't take back, that's what I said at the start, you can't take back what you've done. Whatever you've done is history. It's part of life, it's part of what you've done. You can only do things to try and rectify, try and give back a bit. That's all you can do. You can never actually make up for what you've done. And that's not just bank robberies, that's everything we do in life. Everything we do in life. It doesn't matter what we do. We make mistakes, we do things, we hurt people. We can't take that back. All we can do is try and do some good and try and make up for it like that. That's all we can do.
I guess, John, too.
No, just let me say this. I'll just say one other thing, that we're not talking tonight about glorifying crime or saying, look, these crimes are better than that, or Sydney's better than that. What we're saying, what I'm saying, is that crime, when it happens, it happens, and it doesn't matter. The effect of it is something that's violent. A whole lot are violent, and people don't, a lot of people, even today in jail, do not realise that pointing a gun at somebody is a violent crime. That's all I'll say. I accept it. I didn't accept it when I was younger. I always thought it was just fun. So I'll just say that.
That's right. Well, I guess too, John, it's probably nicer to walk out of a bank at the moment. But anyway, Doug, so you actually worked as a bank teller as a teenager. So what's your take on what John said and knowing the banking system before you started robbing banks?
Because I was a bank teller when I was younger, I was trained how to handle John when he came in, and we were instructed not to shoot John. We were instructed to assist John and get rid of him out of the bank as quickly as possible, because if I shoot a customer, I'm in big trouble. We had, and they still do it on a lot of chemists and that, there's marks on the door so I can judge how tall John was. I'm a bit different to John. I knew the damage I was doing, so when I planned a job, I used to count customers in and customers out to get rid of the customers before I go in. Because being a bank teller, I wanted to work with the people who had been trained how to handle me. So I would talk to them totally different to other bank robbers would do. I wouldn't even point loaded guns at them because I would use my body language, my language, and also I become the authoritarian because I'm much more comfortable inside that bank than John ever will be, because I could look around a bank and know when the alarms had gone off or if they hadn't gone off. And I would say, if I had to rate myself, more than being a criminal, I was a tactician. Knowing the way the banks worked and at different times of the day when you should strike, I would plan robberies in such a way that basically we had rules of engagement. Like we did 23, 24 jobs without one bit of evidence against us. Our planning was so good. Now, the whole setup would be that I'm going to go and get this money. So we would scout around and look at banks, and the first thing I'd do is look at banks as I'm driving around and go, I want a bank that you can't see inside from the street, so nobody on the outside knows I'm in there. Next thing I'd look for is a back door to make sure I can get out of the bank if the police turn up. So I'd go through a whole great big long line, a list the same as if you were choosing a new car or something. And I'd check off all the things. I would try and look through the windows at night time if it's possible to see where the alarms. All banks had little red lights in them to let each member of the staff know the bank robbery has gone off. If the red light hasn't come on, the bank teller hasn't notified. We had, even under our notes, there'd be a spring-loaded thing. Your bottom note was stopping that spring touch the other metal. If the bank teller pulls that bottom note out, the alarms go off. So it's important if you're going to a bank to let them know that the alarms aren't off now, and they won't be off tonight or this afternoon, will they? And basically, I remember my words on the last bank. They were big wooden doors, and I walked in because I selected it because of this, so you couldn't see into the bank, and I wanted to deal with it. For half an hour, I'd been outside watching the bank from a distance, and I was counting them, customers in, customers out. Another reason for counting customers in and customers out is what happened in the old days. People would run into a bank and somebody who lived in that suburb for 30 years would take offence to some person like John and say, "You're not robbing my bank, you little arsehole," and he would grab the gun or something. Now, that gets pretty awkward. So everything like that I was taking into consideration. I watched customers out. In those days, the bank shut at 3 o'clock except for Fridays. I went into the bank at 3 minutes past 3 when the last customer came out. I walked in, my gun was in two pieces in two pockets. As I walked into the bank, I snapped the gun back together and said, you lock those doors. And then I walked back with that person. I looked around and said, The alarms haven't gone off because there was a red light over here that it hadn't been activated. So I know we're pretty good at this stage. They know that I've just locked the front. It's now my bank. And I said something like that to them. Alarms haven't gone off. I'm now in charge. You're going to give me the money. Nobody's going to get hurt. And we're all going home tonight. So I handle banks totally differently. During that robbery, I put my gun on the counter. It wasn't loaded, by the way, but they didn't know that because I didn't need to have a loaded gun. I was in charge. And because they've been trained, they responded to me. And I knew exactly what they wanted to do, get rid of me. What happened during that robbery, I took a TAA bag, the old little TAA bags that you used to do when you went on a plane. God, I should have taken a bigger bag. I had to borrow a bag. They were so helpful, they got me a bigger bag. You know, and they took all the money out of the safe in a big cardboard box. The bag that I ended up with was so heavy I had trouble trying to steer my motorbike. But I wasn't too upset about that. But the thing is, I'd go in with no intention of even raising my voice. I'm raising it more tonight with you guys. Now, if you do that and you keep everybody calm, it's my bank, I'm in charge, we all go home. We had rules of engagement that were set up to keep everybody safe. I'd plan a job in a town where I knew how many police were in that town, how many police cars were in that town, and John doesn't know this, and he'll mention, or somebody's mentioned already tonight, I was there for 27 minutes, maybe a world record. What people don't know is my planning was so good that in country towns in the old days, not every country town had a courthouse. So this copper in this town might have to travel on a Thursday to Lilydale for court cases. So that means I haven't even got a copper in the town. So when I'm in there for 27 minutes, I know roughly when his court cases are. No police in the town. I am now the authority in the town. So it goes very well for me. There's a joke about the Boston bun, John. Look, being a bank teller, I know when it gets close to time, somebody will put the jug on. As soon as everybody walks out of the bank, we all relax. The only thing we've got to do for the rest of the day is recount the money and put it back in the safe. So they all relax, put the cup of tea on. I'd actually observed one of the girls walk up to the local bakery, and I saw the Boston bun go back into that bank. And I love Boston bun. I put them in one of the side rooms, and while they were in the side room, I had a little bit of Boston bun and a cup of tea. I'm not going to run out of that bank. I've never run anywhere in my life. I casually walked out the side door after eating a Boston bun or parts of it, hopped on my motorbike and disappeared into the scrub. All went perfect. When my brother first said to me there will be bank robbers, I said, nah, go and do that. But anyway, I went a bit further, and I observed people like John Killick that would run into a bank and run out of a bank. Now, what I said to my brother is, you are kidding, aren't you? I don't walk through long grass where there are snakes in summer because I can't see them. I don't dive into deep water because I can't see the sharks. And I'm certainly not running out of a bank not knowing where the police are because they're going to have a real big gun and I've got an unloaded gun. So I spent all my time planning robberies totally different to anybody else I ever met in jail or anywhere or listened to because I was a tactician. And so my crimes are totally different. I even stopped robbing banks long before I got caught because I realised it became a drug and an ego. Would you agree? It's like you can't get enough. It's like going fishing. If I go back next time, I'll get the big one. And it's like that to me.
Never a drug to me.
Never got you like that? Well, it did with me because I had a twin brother and it was a competition in a strange way about like, he telling me how good he was. I actually did only one bank, many other crimes, but my bank outweighed all his banks. So there was this brotherly competition. So maybe that's where it came in. But, so I'm totally different to John, but I knew what I was doing to people. That's why only once ever there was one customer in any of my jobs. And he was in a TAB one night. And I'm so casual and so organised and planned that I walked in and this guy's putting a bet on. The guys looked at me over his shoulder and I said, don't worry. Let him put his bet on. He might have a winner tonight. And you think, what's going on here? 27 minutes in the bank and all that? I knew where the police station was, and he was off duty. Even if he got the phone call, by the time he gets out to his car and gets in it, and quite often, even on that job, what I would do before the job, if it's night time, which that one was, I would go up to the police car and put a screwdriver through the tyre. I did everything to make sure I would go home, the staff would go home, and that the police didn't turn up, so even he would go home. That's the way I work. So my stories are totally different to anything you'll ever hear from anybody else.
Okay, do you want to respond to that, how you would choose the bank?
Certainly. The truth is that at one stage, Interpol were looking for me, that's a fact. And I've been up, not something to boast about, I've been up even here or on the top of Australia's Most Wanted quite a few times. And police allege that I did, in my time, and we're going back quite a way, 39 banks. That's what they allege. That's why I got very big sentences. So what we're looking at is a guy, in 1966, you can check the headlines of the newspapers. There was a bank robbed in Kensington in April 1966. I did it. They said, Mr. Minuteman. That's what they called me. I was in and out in a minute. So 39 banks, 39 minutes, one bank, 30 minutes, Boston bun, I ate 2 months too.
Did anybody bring in a butter tonight?
You know, I mean, there's not a comparison. I mean, it's absolutely not a comparison. I mean, it's virtually talking himself out of the game.
Well, I have called you the master of banks, John.
39 banks, 39 minutes, one bank, 28 minutes and a Boston bun. I mean...
17 was eating the bun.
Well, 17. And maybe a cup of tea too, but the thing is, how could he get up and say that he's a tactician?
I had time to eat the bun.
Tactician, I mean, if they made a movie, right?
They wouldn't believe it.
About the bank robbers, they're not going to call you a great tactician.
They're going to call me fatty.
They might say daring. They might say audacious. But 28 minutes or whatever it was, in a bank, eating Boston bun and a cup of tea, just because you felt the cops were out, because we all know, you even put the gun down there. Now, many times I've been in banks where people had tried to stop me. So how do you know there wasn't somebody that's going to try and grab that gun? You don't know. You're assuming. You're assuming you're in control.
All right, I'll tell the secret. In the bag was a real gun.
In the bag was a real gun. You had to get to that gun, you know. And the thing is, somebody could have jumped you. Somebody could have jumped you. Maybe stronger than you, faster than you, younger than you. And the thing is that I don't think a bank robber should take those sort of chances. Not that I'm recommending anybody rob a bank, but, you know, Mr. Minuteman, I think that's the way it should be in banks. Mr. Minuteman, in and out.
You don't know how good that bakery is.
Stupid T-bone steaks.
It's up at Warburton, at the end of the town.
You're in there in a minute, you've got all that money, you can have what you want. You don't have to worry about Boston buns in the banks. So, look, I just think that was a ludicrous argument. You were going all right until you brought that up. So
what he doesn't realise, it was 3 o'clock. It doesn't get dark till 5:30. I had to fill in some time because I like to hide in the dark. So I had 2.5 hours to fill in.
Well, that's true. And, you know, when you look at it, how long did you do for that bank?
Well, my brother told them that I was involved with 27 others or something. 6 months. Technically, I did 6 months. I'll tell you how silly crime is. I do 6 months per job, right? And I end up 20-year sentence. This beard I grew in jail because they said you couldn't grow beards. Do you know how much this beard cost me in jail? 6 months. So the jail punished me the same length of time as each bank or TAB I robbed, because that's how stupid the system is. That's why I still got the beard. That beard's been for 45 years.
So we're isolating one bank, other banks that I did. They're small fish. What this thing about tonight is crime. And I think it affects all these people here would know very well that they might know somebody that's been affected by crime, they might have been affected themselves. But the effects of crime, I think what both of us said has probably gotten across to people that it's the reason we do it are the wrong reasons. Now you would know that yourself. If you had the wrong mentor, that's why you went the way you went. I didn't have a mentor, that's why I went. But the fact is that, as I said, and I believe, and I get it across to others, that I know people that had backgrounds worse than me that have gone on and done things without committing crime. So it's not an excuse. You know, our backgrounds or lack of mentor or the wrong mentor is not a reason or excuse why we do the things we do. But what is important is the choice we make later. Now, I know for a fact that for the last 11 years I've done good things. I've done good things because I've taken that attitude that I did do wrong and that I'm trying to get back. And as I said, that's the important thing of this whole talk tonight is can you, and all of us, doesn't matter what we've done, we might be talking about crime, and I know we should be, but all of us have done things we shouldn't have done. Can we take it back? We can't. But can we make up for it? Maybe we can't make up for what we did there, but maybe we can make up for it by doing other good things. And that's the attitude that I go through. I keep a positive attitude like that and try and get through the rest of my life that way. And it works. Now, I think you're trying to do good things, and that's a credit to you. So I think that we could have got here, we could have talked about Ned Kelly, we could have talked about Darcy Dugan, we could have talked about Ron, we could have talked about crime, the effects.
Hang on, you missed one.
All the theories.
Tough, Choppery, Melbourne boy.
Yeah, well, okay. But I can throw quite a few silly ones out that I won't. But the thing is that we could have talked about those, but we're not glorifying crime. And all those guys are dead. All those guys are dead. Ned Kelly, I know you've got to think about that, but he has been dead 145 years. And the fact is, there's been a lot of criminals since then. Some of them are just as serious as Ned. Some of them just as brave and game as Ned. But the fact is, and he's been glorified in the annals of criminal history, Australian history. And Australia's very funny like that. We've got Ned Kelly as a hero, Farlap the horse, a hero. You know, we're probably the only country
Fine cotton.
that has a holiday for a horse race. So when you look at it and you see how many people love the crime series, they get terrific ratings. We've got a man here, Mac, who runs a podcast about crime, does well, and all the movies. And when I went to a movie, you all would have seen it. It's a great classic movie called Heat, De Niro, Pacino. I found myself barracking for the bad guy, De Niro. And yet, Pacino got him and killed him. And walked out of the theatre and then realised I was barracking for a guy who was a killer. And that's what fantasy can do, that's what books can do, that's what movies can do, TV can do. It can get us into that where we lose sense of the real thing and believe in what we're involved in at that moment. But when we come out and hit the night air and the reality sinks in, we realise what was right and what was wrong. And that's what life's like. That's why I woke up. And that's what I think this debate tonight may have gone a little bit off what it was supposed to be, but I think it's got across to most people here tonight that you've got two guys here talking about things they've done, but they're not glorifying. And I think that's important, that we are not here to glorify crime. We're not talking about who was the best bank robber, we're not talking about who was the best thief. And that was in fun that I might have done in a minute, and he took 27 minutes to name the bus and bun, but that's not important. It's not important. And you know what?
Was to me on the day.
50 years from now, they won't be talking about you in Boston.
Yes, they will.
They won't.
People on Facebook are starting to get into me about that because what you've said.
50 posts up a day, that's why.
All right, mate.
Does anybody here like Boston Bun? Go on, show our hands. Go on.
Alright, well, we'll do one more question and then we'll do like a question up to everyone else. So, just to both of you, if you could speak to your younger self before you did before you got into crime, what would you tell your younger self now?
Well, I would say to myself, as a young guy, knowing what I know, and it's a question that really, you know, we all know we do things differently. We're young, we'd do it again, we'd do it better. But if I could somehow give advice to that young guy, because I knew what I was like, I was pretty headstrong, I was hardly told anything, particularly once I went off the rails. But I would say that guy, for me, my main problem was getting off the track here, which is the truth, that don't gamble, because gambling was my destruction. That's what I fell down. I became a very heavy gambler, and you have a look at the history of heavy gamblers. Most of them finish up in a pretty bad way. They might finish up jail and might finish up dead. So I would say that. But the other thing I would say is that try and think of the result of your action. Because when you're young, you don't. You'll do things, and I see it all the time with young people. They'll do things, and I did it all the time. And you worry about the results of that action later. If you can, it's sort of like a chess game. If you can look ahead, if I do this and do that, what's going to happen down there? If you can look at it like that, then you're not going to, quite often you're not going to do what you eventually do if you think it out. But it's pretty hard to put an old head on young shoulders. And it's very hard to talk to young people and get it across, particularly today, when we're living in a world of social media and so much influence in social media, that so much peer pressure on people, and so many young people, I think, are influenced by all this stuff. It's not like the old days when we didn't have that sort of influence. So it's a lot harder, but my advice certainly would be to think before you leave, you know, and that's pretty old saying, it's a good one. Excuse me.
Thanks, mate. Doug, what would you say?
What were we actually? What are we?
What would you say to your younger self?
Anyway, I'm going to just tell everybody something right now. I'm not even going to listen to you, Rob. What's important, and I have a bit of fun. I'm not serious about anything. I went through my whole jail like this. I smuggled stuff, all sorts of things. I'm going to take you back before the pandemic. I used to go down to Ravenhall prison and talk to 100 prisoners at a time. And my opening words were, I am so sad to be here today because you could be my daughter, you could be my grandson, and you are wasting your lives because you're no good at being criminals. And if you're no good at being criminals, give it up. And I've never had the right to tell somebody what they should do, so I then followed up with, you can continue. It'll be on your own head. And I used to talk to them about the cost. There's no good talking to young people about what you're doing to other people. They don't care. I used to look at them and say things like this. While you're in prison, your girlfriend is going out with your best mate. And I would talk to them about what it really means to them, what they could understand. That when you get out, you won't have a car. Your mates that have been working for 7 years will be paying off a mortgage. And you'll be nothing. So when you talk to young people, and I do that, I can make a lot of jokes about crime and you think he doesn't seem to care about too much. I really do. I was on Channel 10 about a month ago, and when I was talking about this, I almost had tears in my eyes because I was reliving the days when I was talking to young people that I could see were going to waste their lives. One thing I realised in jail was I had more to offer myself and other people around me. And one thing that hits really hard on me for what I did, of course, I understood what I was doing to other people because I was a bank teller. So I'm not stupid or naive to that fact. But my upbringing made me override that. And then later on, I sat in a prison cell and said, how the hell did I get here? And I studied myself. I understood why I got there. Once you understand yourself, you can then start helping other people because we're all very similar. The first thing is you have to do with young people is get them to take responsibility for the bad bits in their life. And I say to them, if you won't take responsibility for the bad bits, who's going to take responsibility for the good bits? Because if you keep blaming everybody else for what you've done, you will not be able to move on. And if you do some good bits, will it be the bloke over there that controlled the good bits? So you better get used to the fact you're totally responsible and there's only one person that can change your life, and that's one decision. And what I used to tell the young boys is get up and look in the mirror. Every time you weaken on your decision to do the right thing, look in the mirror and ask yourself, will you lie to yourself? Look in that mirror and say, no, I decided to straighten my world. Get up at that mirror and look in there again and promise it again. Lie to anybody you like, but never lie to yourself. And that's how I turned my whole life around. I'm still a crim inside, but I learned to control what I feel. When I was working with the Salvos for many years after the bushfires, one of them said, do you think you would ever rob a bank? I said, if I drive home tonight and I pass a bank and the front door's open, I'm going in. And if I get in further and the vault's open, I'm loading my bag. But I'll never point a gun at a person again, loaded or unloaded. Because the stress these people went through was not from me, because I can't ever remember a bank teller being shot. But the stress that we put on them was the possibility of what might happen. Because I've had guns pointed at the back of my head, I've been shot at during escape attempts, and it's all perceived stress which manifests, and that is normal. So I couldn't understand why they would get stressed, because I could handle that situation. I would even joke about it. I hope somebody comes in and robs me today. That'll be adventurous, I'll make the news. So it's all how you see everything. And even with victims who continue to be victims, it's because they're hanging on to it. That's really, really, really sad. My fault, but they're prolonging it. Because all they have to look at is the fact that they didn't get shot. And I jokingly say now, if I ever rob a bank again, which I probably won't do, as I walk out the door, I'll throw the water pistol back to them and say, thanks for the money, but you weren't in any stress. But the thing is, we need to talk to young people. There's no use talking about punishment and all those sort of things. It's too late. We have to start educating children from the age of 10 now about the responsibilities of their own lives and bad decisions. And that's where I fit in. That's the sort of work I do. So I might be a bit flippant and a little bit smart ass even today. But there's some really serious stuff we can do. And we've got to go back and teach young people respect and responsibility. Otherwise, what's happening around us today in Melbourne will be going on for another 30, 40 years. And I don't really think I've got much more to add. And I look back. Yes, in a strange way, I enjoyed the adventures of my father and myself and all that. But it was very self-destructive. My greatest moments in the last week was when I looked at a photo of my daughter's clinic where she works, and there's some of my paintings on her walls, and I went, my paintings are brightening up a clinic where people go when they're sick. And the thing is, at the end of the day, I don't know. I don't care what any of you think about me. I don't care what the press thinks about me. They've been writing about my family for 50 years. The last 10 years they've been writing good stuff because of the work I've been doing. But I've got one rule. In my last 10 seconds on this world, I am the only person that will ever judge me, and I'm giving it a damn good go now. And that's all that's important. And it's all that's important for anybody to understand that don't waste your life. Doesn't matter if you're a bank robber or you're a kid. Anybody here, live up to your potential. Live up to your potential for your children, for your mum. How do you think I would have affected my mum having 2 twin boys in jail? I didn't see it at the time, but we're all responsible for what we put out to the people around us who love us and need us.
Robert, I know we're running short on time, but I would like, if it's possible, if someone's come all the way from Adelaide, we're talking about something important here about why people commit crimes. And you've heard from both of us. There's someone here who made headlines right around Australia, committed a crime. And if we could ask Jackie in the audience here just why she did commit those crimes, I think it'd be enlightening.
One of the things that I wanted to bring attention to everybody is that there is a reason why criminals do what they do sometimes. It's not...
Go on. I want to learn something.
It's not like John or Doug wake up one day and said, look, today, instead of buying a coffee, I'm going to rob a bank. It's not as simple as that. So if I can just give you a little rundown on my past. I came from a very strict religious upbringing, and the rules of the house were that you abide by the rules. If you don't like the rules, you get out. I didn't like the rules. I questioned the rules, and it became a problem. And then I met John at 16, and John came into my world, and I essentially told him one of the main reasons why I wanted to get out of my household, and that was that one of my brothers, was sexually abusing me for many years. So my option was to stay at home and continue to be sexually abused, or I have to leave home. I'm under 18. I don't have money, I don't have a job, I don't have a home, I don't have anything. John, who had just come out of the jail in South Australia, he was the first person I'd ever told about my situation. And he said to me, I will help you start a new life. For some reason, I don't know, I was 17, I trusted him. There must have been something in him that made me want to trust him. That this person who I've known since I was 16, or now 17, is going to help me get out of a really tricky situation. But he gave me enough confidence that I could trust this person. So I trusted this person. We ventured off to Sydney, and we got ourselves into trouble. There's no getting around it. We got ourselves into trouble, and he got himself into trouble, and he basically said to me, would you mind getting me out of jail? Just like, would you mind buying me a coffee? It wasn't quite like that, but it was similar. He didn't coerce me, it was simply a request. If I had walked away and said, John, no, I can't do that, he would have been fine with it. I felt that at that point I owed John, because John saved me from a situation that was stay at home, continue to be sexually abused, or walk away.
You did try to get help though.
Sorry?
You did try to get help before.
Yeah. And so that's how John and I met. So it was a long time ago. And so essentially, a lot of planning, a lot of visits in jail. I did break John out of jail. And the funny thing about the entire thing is that I did break John out of jail. We were on the road for 10 months, and we were together for 3 years. And I got a 2-year sentence for breaking him out of jail. He got nothing.
How long did you get?
2.
See, this is a funny thing. Even in Victoria, I had 30 mates that escaped out of Pentridge. John, what happened in the old days, we would get 3 months for breaking out of jail when you're doing 20 years, and that runs concurrent. So it was a boys' club, you didn't get punished. And John didn't get punished because he was already in jail.
No, he didn't get punished because they didn't know that there was no paperwork signed that he even left the prison in the first place.
Yep.
So as far as the authorities were concerned, John never left the prison at all. So he went...
Technicality.
It's a technicality. So consequently, he's doing the crime for whatever...
I've forgotten how long did you get?
2 years.
I'm looking at his face and I'm going,
Nothing.
I'm not trading 2 years for that face. Sorry.
Nothing. That's the... I can't say any more. He did nothing. The authorities, unfortunately, did not sign the paperwork to allow him to go to a public hospital where I broke him out of. I got caught.
Sure. So what you're saying is we all have different reasons, and your reason was different. It was an emotional reason, and you just felt that was what you should do, the same as I did with my father.
It was way more than an emotional reason.
Yeah. But it was way more emotional. He was my father as well as being emotional.
I had to get out of a situation that I was not. No one likes to be sexually abused. I know this might be a tough subject for some people, and I do apologise for that, but sexual abuse is not okay. And so for someone to save me and get me out of that situation, for me to end up where I ended up, is a shitty choice, a bad choice. I acknowledge that. I've done my time, I've done my crime. But I will forever be grateful for John for getting me out of that situation. So my point for saying this in the first place is that not all people, criminals, whatever you want to call them, are making decisions to rob a bank today or to rob a survey today or to, to go and do whatever it is they want to do that's naughty. A lot of people do it for a reason, and we don't need to know what that reason is. We don't need to be guided by the media. We don't need to be guided by any of those things. What we need to do is understand that there's potentially a reason why these people are doing it. You don't just wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to rob a bank today. I'm sure, no one does, right? So I think my main point for talking about all this was the fact that I wanted people to understand that there are other reasons why people do things. I don't think it's right that the media portray people sometimes in the wrong way. I think it's a good idea if the public make forgiveness for people or just allow these people to do what they need to do for the reasons they need to do. And we don't even have to understand the reasons they're doing what they're doing. We have no responsibility to it. We have no ownership to it. We just know that these people are perhaps in a poor position. They're making unreasonable decisions and they're going to pay the price. The law is going to catch up with you. But don't be judged by what the media or anybody else tells you. And just as a little side note, this person that has abused me has also abused another family member, and that family member and I have pressed charges after 43 years, and we are taking this guy to trial next year.
G'day and welcome back. We have the lovely Daniela again from our wonderful supporters, Whitehorn Associates. And Daniela, we've spoken to her before, but we're going to speak to her a little bit more today. Daniela, you were formerly with the Corrective Services, I believe.
That's correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and your experience with that, and also the attributes to the firm?
Absolutely. So I worked at Corrective Services in 2019 for a parole officer, or what's now termed as a community corrections officer. And I did that for a few years. I really enjoyed the role, but it came to a point where I realised that the system wasn't working. And as much as I may try and motivate people to, say, address some behaviours that were seemingly creating issues in their lives, I decided to go and pursue another path. And obviously I'd been a lawyer for several years, since 2011, and I used that opportunity now and that experience to really understand what people are going through, and particularly a lot of my clientele base is incarcerated and they've experienced incarceration in and out. And I suppose you both can attest, and many of your viewers understand, the system just doesn't work. And a lot of this stems from abuse that people have experienced early in childhood.
Absolutely. It's absolutely fantastic. Do you want to throw something in there, John? Well, look, her experience is vast and incredible.
Well, it is,
which adds to Whitehall's experience as well. I mean,
and the fact that you deal with quite often serious offenders.
That's right.
Many of those serious offenders you'll find to dig into the background.
Yep.
And some of them I'm talking about really high profile have gone through abuse.
Yes.
And a lot of them because of their standing.
Yep.
In the system, don't want to bring it up.
Yep.
And sometimes it can take 20, 30 years. And I've seen some of the toughest men, we used to be the real to the food, so-called, and they finally come out, they broke down.
Yeah.
This thing really does affect me, and you would have learned that in your role. You would have learned that, so you know what you're doing.
Absolutely. And so many clients actually, even though they've been in and out and done several reports for court and all that, they actually had to discuss their abuse, and the first time that they discuss it is when they come and engage with us. And I asked them, so why haven't you spoken about this? Like, this would have actually helped in your sentencing and things like that. And I said, I was too ashamed to talk about it.
Too ashamed.
And this is the time now. I feel like I have strength to talk about it. So. And
there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not your fault to start with. But you're 100% right where that stems from.
John, what was your biggest haul?
Not much, 35,000, but that was in the 80s. It was a fair bit of money in the 80s. But, you know, when you're in for a minute and out for a minute, you know, you don't get to the ball, you know. But I nearly always did it on my own. I didn't have any backups, so I was just in and out.
You would have been able to eat Boston bun if you had good backup.
Well, that's true, but it takes 27 minutes.
Well, I knew when the train was going.
You had a dive bomb go off on you too once.
That's right, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because all those years that I never had that misfortune, the very last bank that I did do was in January '99, which was exactly 33 years and almost a day that I won the first one. So they slipped the dive bomb into it, but I'd always known it was in the fives, and you know.
So you needed inside information, John.
No,
I never got dive bombs.
No, it was always in the fives, but there've been a team robbing banks in that area, further afield, and so what they did, they slipped it in a different.
Of course they did. Yeah. That's what we were trained to do, John.
Well, I don't know, 38 banks before that.
Can we ask a really interesting question? Can you imagine he comes in to robs me? I probably would have said, one for you, John, one for me, one for you, one for me, and one for the horse in the fifth race.
Well, you might have, but the thing is that I didn't rob country banks in those days.
No, I was working in the city.
They let you work in the city?
I was working at 39 Elizabeth Street.
How did a country boy get in that city?
Talented, I suppose.
Well, anyway, look, you're right. That actually brought me undone, and it led to a lot of other things, which actually led to the escape in the helicopter. So that dive bomb that was put in that thing, that had never happened to me.
Did it go off?
Oh, it went off. There was red smoke. Yeah, and the thing is that I was getting chased, and people were driving past, and they thought it was a movie. They said, they were ringing up saying, look, there's some movie in town, because then I accosted the guy. He was throwing rocks at me, fired a shot over his head, and it was like a scene out of a movie, actually. I'll never forget that. And that was the last crime that I ever committed, really. It was 1999.
Well,
if you look at beside John in the showcase, that's his actual suit that he wore when he robbed that last bank.
Yeah, that's the suit I actually wore. That is the suit and the shirt that I wore on that day, on the 20th of January 1999. And that there is a jumper that was knitted for me by Lucy Dutko, who later on busted me out of jail in a helicopter. She knitted that jumper for me.
John used to go dancing. He used to love dancing. He used to go dancing in a suit, rob a bank in a suit, and then turn up at the magistrates in the same suit. Oh, sorry, John. I've been waiting all night to get that one.
But it's true. It's true. I always look good.
I used to have to buy. No, he's very dapper, John. I'm just a working class bank boy.
But if you look at the showcase next to Judd, that's Judd Darren's footy jersey from the B Division in Pentridge.
See that? It says wasted.
Wasted, which is wrong.
Well, I think you could have done better,
That's
John.
why I won't support.
He doesn't like me calling him wasted.
Well, what's wasted? I'm sitting here at my age, I won't say how I am, but I'm sitting here.
We'll put it this way, if a woman your age chatted me up, I would say, I'm sorry, love.
Well, that's not going to happen to you anyway.
Well, I know, I'm a sad, lonely person.
I think you're out of luck there.
I am.
The thing is that if that looks like me, then you should do another one of Santa Claus.
What he forgets is I'm the artist, I have final say, and it's artistic licence.
I'll write a story about you.
Hey,
Is there any other?
there's 35 people going to write some rubbish about me tomorrow. They go, what a dickhead they met on Saturday night.
Yeah, John, I just want to know about the chopper. How did you organise that, and did you have a pilot, and what happened to the other people involved with all that?
With the chopper, sorry, the escape.
Yes.
Well, Lucy, the one who actually got me out, she did 7 years in jail. She actually turned to God in the last 6 months of her sentence, and since then she's gone out and become a churchgoer and believes in what she's doing. And as far as I know, she's living a pretty good life. So she's okay. It hurt. She went through a lot. They gave her a hard time. And we all know that it was a mistake, but you don't think of these things when you're doing it. And the pilot has done terrific out of it because he made a lot of money out of the movie. In fact, he made so much that he's able to buy a helicopter service over in New Guinea. He likes me. We get on pretty well. And sent him to Port. We keep in touch, and we did a show on Willesee actually. They flew him over. And he said that me or any of my friends want to go over there, they can get a cut price helicopter ride. So
Yeah, but he might throw you out, John.
you might throw me out. I'm not going over there. New Guinea's a dangerous place.
You're not allowed to go to New Zealand if you've done more than 5 years, John. You can't go.
Yeah, well, that's that right? Who told you that?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it's not New Zealand, it's New Guinea. You've got to listen.
Oh, New Guinea. You know, John, I don't listen.
Hey, John, just further to that, just so everyone knows, how did it come about? When you're in Silverwater Jail,
Yeah.
how did the idea come about to get the helicopter, or how did you even organise it?
How to manage it? I truly believe it's fate. It was fate. I didn't believe in stuff like fate, but I'm a firm believer in fate now. I think fate dictates a lot of things in our lives. And I think particularly the escape was meant to happen. And it had to happen at Silverwater because everybody knows that most prisoners have got a dream, ever since I can remember, if escaping in a helicopter. You know, it's unbelievable. You go out in a helicopter. Yeah. But it never happens. There was one down at Pentridge, got foiled, and another one.
Yeah, 83, Dave McMillan.
That's right.
I did a lot of time with those boys. They got given up.
Yeah, but they got given up because everybody in Sydney knew it was going to happen too.
Yep.
But the thing is that for it to happen, it had to happen at Saltwater Jail at the time it happened. Because if a helicopter comes over any prison, then the guards are well aware. And I think everyone might have been there for 20 years, itching to be able to shoot down someone getting in a helicopter. Now, the Geneva Convention, which I knew about, says that you cannot shoot at an aircraft over a prison because it could be a hostage situation. So that is what I was going on the Geneva Convention. Otherwise I wouldn't have done it. So I said to Lucy, she said, I've got to get you out. And I said, well, look, it's almost impossible. It's maximum security. I've looked at it. It's escape proof. And she said, Jackie got you out. She said, I can get you out. And I said, I don't.
Hang on, what was that?
She said, Jackie got you out. I can get you out. That's what I never. You just don't forget these things. And so I was thinking, you know, we're going to have to break it off. And I didn't want to break it off, but I knew I'm going to jail for a long time. And then I saw these helicopters coming over the Oval. And I realised the Olympics are coming on in Sydney. And all those people are visitors. And there's 20, 30 coming over in about 6 hours. And I looked at the reaction of the prison officers. Any other jail, they were on alert. They didn't even look up. They become blasé about the fact all these helicopters coming over. They didn't even give it a thought. Now I said to Lucy, look, we can maybe get out of the helicopter, but you'd have to hijack it. She said, that's brilliant. So she was all for it. And once I knew she was for it, we worked on it. Then we didn't know anything about helicopters, how to do it. And then, this is what I mean about fate. Not only were we in the right jail, but then they brought a guy from South Africa, Scotland, New Zealand, Sydney. They put him in saltwater jail. He was a trained helicopter pilot. He was a con man, but a trained helicopter pilot who had about 8,000 hours service. They put him in my wing. We had 20 wings. So that's a 5% chance that he's going in there. Plus the fact that he's actually come at that time in that jail. Then he landed in my cell. So that it's almost a win for 1 chance that it's going to happen. And I thought, I'm being set up here to get inside my mind and know what I'm thinking, you know. But it was just fake. It was just fake. And I said to Lucy, look, we can do this. So I spoke to the guy and I learned everything there was to know about helicopters. He had helicopter magazines. I went through and I said, what's the transponder? He said, that's the sign alarm through the authorities. If somebody hijacks a helicopter, they hit that, or if they have trouble, they hit that. So I learned just about everything there was, the heights, what the actual earphones are for. And I told Lucy, and she went out and did a trial run, the height of the helicopter, went over and had a look. And she said, she came back, she's pretty excited, and said, we can do it. And it was just sheer luck that the cards fell that way. It was fate, it was meant to happen. I really think it was meant to happen. Everything had to go that way, and then the day that it happened, I rang her, and I had very lucky to get the phone. It's very hard to get the phone when we're going out, but I had to wait and see if we're going for an hour. We only went out twice a week, and we went out for an hour, and in jail so many things will happen. You can have a fight, short startage, short staff, shortage of staff, there's so many things can go wrong with it, they'll just lock it down, you don't go out. So once I knew we were going out, then I rang her and just said, it only took about 15 seconds. I said, well, I'm going out for a job, I'll call you later. She knew. She was waiting near the aerodrome at Bankstown. She'd already booked the flight and she came over, but they had a delay, they had to get a different helicopter, the other one had something wrong with it. That was fate also, I think, and in the end we had a small one, was running late. She got there about 6 minutes to go, and they were taking us back in. And I'd seen about 10 helicopters coming over, and each one wasn't the one I thought, I know she's going to do it, but she's going to get here late, and it's going to be the worst stand-up date in history because she'll hijack a helicopter and won't be there. And I was thinking maybe I'll fall over and have a heart attack and just try and stay there longer. But then she came and the rest is history. They actually shot at us 3 times. They hit the chopper 3 times. And that was the 9th time I've been shot at, and they've all missed it. So these things are fate. I probably should have been dead many times. It had to be that jail at that time. Had to have that guy come in, so I was able to learn things. And I just think it was meant to be, fate. Somebody was meant to get away in a helicopter in Australia, and I was the one who chose to do that. And I believe that was fate. And I'm able to talk about it now. And it hasn't happened since. That was 1999. But I'm a great believer in fate. And so many things have happened, not just to me, but so many people I know. And I just think if your time's up, time's up. And if something's meant to be, it's going to happen. If you're meant to meet somebody, you're going to meet that person. You know, I think that's in fate. So, you know, my policy is don't worry too much. Whatever's going to happen, it's going to happen. And just take it as it comes. That's my belief.
Awesome. Is there any other questions?
I have. Can I have the mic?
Sure.
I've listened to that whole conversation, and while John was talking about that, because I was a prisoner once, all I could think about is in cells, people think they got these magazines, and this other guy says to John, have a look at the body on this one. Oh, the centerfold of that 333 helicopter is beautiful. That's all I could think of. Sorry, John.
Is that right?
Dave, what did you spend your money on that you robbed from these banks?
Was that for me?
What would you spend your money on in the banks?
What did I spend my money on? Can I just say wine, women and song? But I was still working at the same time. During the 3 years I think we robbed banks, my income from the building trade outweighed the banks. So I didn't take it too seriously because my brother was the one that was robbing banks and buying more racehorses. So I was never in that situation. And I did look back once I got to jail and worked out the finances during that time. When I had a good time, but that's not why I was doing it. I was doing it purely out of peer group pressure from my brother. What you got to understand, all my life I'd been on the run with my father around the country. He died under a false name in Adelaide. So my whole life was centred around moving on. My dad dies when I'm 18 in my arms of a massive heart attack. And I think it's the only time I've really been busted. 6 months later, my mum remarries somebody when we came back to Melbourne because they all grew up in Greensboro together, and that guy's wife had just died. My father had just died. So at 18, I thought, well, my father has deserted me in a strange way. My mother has deserted me in a strange way. So I only had my twin brother, who we'd got to remember we'd be basically fighting everybody and running from the law and all sorts of things. So when he said do this, I said, well, you're all I got left. I had been married at that stage, but it was a bad marriage. And I actually remember and maybe you should make sure you marry the right person. Because my brother says, where to do that? And I said, may as well, my marriage is crap. And I still remember saying that. I wish I had found a better girl. So for me, the money was nothing. And even though the last bank was a bit bigger than John's, what he talked about was enough to buy 2 houses. And I sat under a gum tree and said, you've got to stop this. This is not about money. If you continue, it's about ego or all the wrong things. And then I would be the same as the rest of them. It's just becoming your natural life. And I actually didn't enjoy that thought. And I stopped robbing banks in 1978 in October. My brother continued, and I think he did a job in just March or something, got caught, gave me up. So I'd actually stopped 7 or 8 months earlier and told him I would never carry a gun again, and I haven't for the last 50 years or whatever it's been. But I'm still thinking about 2 blokes looking at helicopters.
Any other questions? No, all good. Thanks, John and Doug.
Thank you.
That was amazing.
Thanks, everybody.
Both John and Doug have got books for sale if you want to go to them tonight and have them signed. And Doug's also got some of his paintings for sale.
Jack, you will sign mine as well.
Beautiful. And we'll open the bar if anyone wants to drink. Everyone's more than welcome to hang around the museum if you want. And
Finally, would like to thank very much all the people who came, particularly from interstate, and that include Athanase and Connie, who came from Sydney, Jackie and James from Adelaide. We had Arabella and her mother Sharon. They also came from Sydney, and much appreciated. But also, we have to thank Rob. The show could have gone on without Rob, and thanks for setting it up, Rob, as always, very professionally done. Thank you, Ruth, and for coming, as always, and also Cheryl. It was great to see you. I hadn't met you before, and it was really nice to see you. Thank you, all those people. I know I've probably missed a few, but if I have, Adrian and Rhonda, of course, and of course, Atlanta and Catherine. But they're always our regulars and always supportive of us. Thank you very much.